Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we are going to explore Bootstrap and we are also going to learn a little bit about Bootstrap grids that are there so that we can create responsive designs for our website. Now, what being responsive means is that these websites that we create, they should work on all the screens, including mobiles, tablets, as well as desktops, right? The mostly used devices. Now, this video is a part of the basic front-end course that I'm creating that you can see in front of your screen. The link to this course would be in the description below. Also, this video is a continuation of this plan code and clone any website better video. So if you haven't checked out that video yet, then I do emphasize that you should go and check that video out first because we talked about CSS grids and box model in that video, and it is going to be necessary going forward, right? So that's an important video, and if you haven't watched it yet, then pause this video right now and go check out that video at least, right? And this video is also a part of the larger, web development course that is there. So it is a part of the phase one of the bootcamp. So you can also check out the entire bootcamp if you're interested. It has about 19 videos, so this is going to be the 20th one, right? And you can explore other courses that are available. All of them are part of this web development course. And with all that being said, without any further ado, let's get started with Bootstrap. So what exactly is Bootstrap? Bootstrap is the most popular CSS framework, arguably the most popular CSS framework, at least for the backend developers, for developing responsive and mobile first, websites that are there. And Bootstrap 5.2 is the newest version of Bootstrap as of this date when I'm recording this video, and it supports all major browsers except Internet Explorer 11 and below it. Taking a look at the Bootstrap documentation, you can see that I have the latest documentation opened up in front of me. This is version 5.2, which is the latest as of now. And they're provided with a quick start where they ask you to create an index.html and then, add their links and script tags that are there that they provide. And your Hello World Bootstrap driven application is ready, right? So before doing all of this, let's first understand what these CDN links mean, right? What is CDN links, right? So they've given these CDN links for CSS, they've given these CDN links for JavaScript, and they've also given some CDN links for something called a popper JS, right? So we'll talk about all of that, but let's first understand what CDN is, right? So what exactly is a CDN, right? So CDN is a content delivery network that's been around since the late 90s, and a CDN brings content closer to the user, improving the performance of the web service, right? So they have servers at hundreds of locations that are there around the world, and these locations are called POP or point of presence, right? And a server inside the POP can be called an edge server. So you must have heard about the word edge server and database on the edge and things like that. So whenever a server is inside a POP or a point of presence, it's called an edge server, right? Pretty simple. Now to understand that with the help of a diagram, right? So this is a hand-driven diagram that I created, right? So consider this box that is there in front of your screen as a map of the world, right? And let's say that this circle here, this is the USA region that is there, right? This is your USA region. Then this is your European region, this is India, this box is India, and this is Japan here, right? So let's say this is like a world map here. Now let's say that there is some user in USA, right? We have a user here in USA, right? Let's say this is the user that we are talking about at the moment, right? And let's say that they want to access some data from the database, right? So what it makes sense for this user, if let's say I didn't had a POP present, right? And let's say that instead of having these databases here, I would have had a database here, right? Somewhere in Africa, you could say, right? My data center is in Africa, right? Something like that. So now this user would have to access this data from this database, right? This user also would have to access database from here, this also from here, this also from here, right? So something like that, right? Now Consider the distance between the user and the database. Let's say the user is based out in USA and they have to access data from the database, but the data, center that is there, the server from which it is going to fetch the data is available in Africa, right? So it's going to take time. Right, the user is first going to send a request to the server asking that I need this data. Then the database or the server is going to, uh, process the request. They're going to see if this user has access to the data or not, if they can send the data or not, and if they can, then they will return the data back. So this entire thing of user asking the data and then, you know uh, the server processing the request and then sending back the data, this entire thing that is there, it it will take a lot of time depending on how far the user is from the server, right? If let's say the same, there's a user based out in Africa, let's say this is the user who's based out in Africa and he's the one requesting this data, then relatively he will receive the data faster than someone who is there in USA, someone who is there in Europe, someone who is there in Japan, someone who is there in India, right? So what the CDN means is that forget about this Africa, forget about this database. What they have is they have data centers or they have POPs, points of presence, present, at multiple locations around the world, right? So this point of presence that we talked about, consider these databases as these POPs, right? These point of presence, right? So they have these available in multiple parts of the world, and whenever a user requests the data from the server, right, they redirect them to the closest POP that is available to the user. And this POP for a user who is there in USA, this is the POP they are going to get the data from. For a person in Europe, this is the POP they're going to get the data from. For India, this is the POP, right? For Japan, this is the POP, right? So having many POPs all over the world, as written in the last line, having many POPs all over the world ensures that every user can reach a fast edge server close to them, right? So instead of a user who is based out in USA trying to fetch data from a server that is based out in Africa, what CDN does is they have these servers at multiple location, and based on the user's location wherever they are based, they just redirect them to the closest server that is near them, and hence the time it takes to process the entire request of user first asking the data, the server processing the request and sending back the data, this entire time that it takes significantly reduces, right? So that is what CDN is for you, content delivery network, right? Coming back to our documentation on Bootstrap, so the first step that they have told us in Quick Start is to include, create this index.html. So that is exactly what we are going to do. We are going to copy this, we are going to paste it here, and we are going to fix the indentations, right? So that our code is more readable. I personally prefer 4 tab indentations. It might depend on person to person. You can also use 2 tab indentations as well, right? So the next step that they tell you is to include Bootstrap's CSS and JS, right? So Bootstrap is a library of pre-written CSS that is there. And also, I mean, since CSS is sometimes not enough to add a set of features, functionalities, some minute details that are there, they also have some pre-written JavaScript available as well. So what they're asking us to do is that place the link tag in the head of your CSS, right, or your HTML document, whatever it is, and the script tag for your JavaScript bundle before the closing body, right? So that's exactly what we are going to do. We have their CSS, this thing is their CSS link that we have to add, and we have to add it inside our head. So I'm going to add a comment saying Bootstrap CSS, right? And I will include this link for the CSS, right? And then before my body tag is closing, right, I'm going to include the script tag that they have provided us with, right? So the script tag for the basically the Bootstrap JS, right? For the JavaScript of the Bootstrap, I've kept it at the before the end of my body tag, Right. And apart from that, they say that you can also include popper for your JS separately. If you don't plan on using any drop downs, popovers, tooltips, or things like that, then uh, you can save some KBs by not including popper.js, right? So if you need anything that pops up in the window, then you can include popper.js. Otherwise, it's not necessary. So for now, we are going to skip it, and later we are going to include it while we are building stuff, right? They've given CDN link separately. If you, let's say, do not want to copy paste from the top, you can just take the name of the CSS file that is there from here, or the JS file that is there from here, right? And that's pretty much it for the introduction part. They've given a few things, but that's not necessary until and unless you want to become a part of their community, which would be a good thing. If you're really good with CSS, you can also contribute into Bootstrap's repository as well, right? You can see in the getting started part itself that they have a lot of things mentioned as well. If you want to download Bootstrap, check out the contents that are there for Bootstrap, all the different things that are there, the files that you can include, right? So sometimes you don't need the entire functionality of Bootstrap, but you don't you just need a part of the functionality that it provides, right? You just need, let's say, Bootstrap grids, nothing else, right? So in that case, you can also uh, link a certain file that is there. So if, let's say, I just want to use grids in there, then I can replace my bootstrap.css with bootstrapgrid.css, right? Something like that. So these are different contents which you know make the entire bootstrap CSS and JavaScript, right? And they also have a few things regarding JavaScript, webpacks, parcel. But if you're a beginner, then you don't have to worry about all of that. They also have a few things for customizations as well, how you can customize using Sass, change some options, colors, CSS variables, whatever it is, right? Optimization and things. So again, I mean, this is something that you don't have to worry about as a beginner. Let's move directly to layout, right? Because layout is something that we discussed in our last video, which was plan, code, and clone any website better using CSS grids, right? So let's talk about layout in CSS, right? So the first topic in layouts is the breakpoints, right? So breakpoints are customizable widths that determine how your responsive layout behaves across devices or viewport sizes in Bootstrap, right? So let's first read the core concepts of breakpoints. So breakpoints are the building blocks of a responsive design, right? And again, I mean, explaining the responsive design, you would notice that many of the websites that are created, they are accessible in the mobile as well, the tablets as well, the desktop, laptop as well, larger screens as well. Sometimes you want to access a website through TV these days. Sometimes you need a website that opens up in your smartwatches as well, right? So you know a, a a single code base that works in all of these different screen sizes is a responsive design, right? So breakpoints are building blocks of responsive design, right? We already understand that. Use media queries to architect your CSS by breakpoint. So media queries are something in CSS that we haven't learned about yet. And in fact, we haven't also, explored a lot about CSS. There's a lot pending. So that is something that we are going to do eventually, right? As we learn by do, right? And coming to the third point, mobile first responsive design is the goal, right? So this is a good industry practice in today's time. I mean, whatever websites are being created, web applications, all of these applications, the objective is to create a mobile first design. And what that means is that you basically create the website keeping in mind that the user is going to be accessing the website through their mobile phone, right? And then you make it responsive enough so that, you know, it works in different screen sizes as well, right? So that's your mobile first design, because if you notice, majority of us in today's time use browsers in our mobile phones, right, instead of actually using desktop. If you talk about majority of the population, they would be exploring some e-commerce through their mobile phone, or doing things with their mobile phone and things like that. So that's why I mean mobile first design is a good practice in industry, especially depending on the product as well. But for front-end developers, mobile first design is the goal, right? So that is something that you need to emphasize on. Now let's talk about the available breakpoints that are there, right? So we all know that there are, different screen sizes that are there, right? So for different screen sizes, they have given some, class infix that are there, right? So if you talk about extra small screens, and don't worry if you're not able to understand any of this right now, eventually as we move forward in this video, you'll start getting a hang of, what this means, right? But just bear with me for now. So if you talk about breakpoints, there are, all these breakpoints that are there, about 6 breakpoints, right? So there's this extra small breakpoint with no class infix, and the dimensions for that is that anything that is less than 576 pixels is considered extra small, right? So if we talk about the small screens, right, the second one, so anything that is greater than 576 pixels, greater than or equal to, it will come in under, small screen sizes. Then after that, the medium screen sizes would be considered for any screen size that is greater or equal to 768 pixel. Similarly, for large, it is greater than or equal to 992 pixel, right? For extra large, it is greater than or equal to 1200 pixel, and for extra large, extra large, right, it is greater than or equal to 1400 pixel, right? So these are the 6, breakpoints that are usually available in in your uh, s- in your bootstrap, right? And this is how, bootstrap usually creates all these breakpoints. So up until, from 0 onwards it is extra small, then from 576 onwards it is small, then from 768 onwards it is, medium, then 992 onwards it is large, 1200 onwards it is extra large, and then 1400 onwards it is extra large. Let's write this down for the sake of it, right? So that we can come back to it later, right? So I'm just quickly going to copy paste this thing, increase the size of it. Yeah. So anything greater than 0 is extra small, anything greater than 576 pixels is small, greater than 768 pixel is medium, 992 is large, 1200 is extra large, and then 1400 is extra large, right? So we can change the layout based on these class infixes, right? So all these things that are mentioned here, all these things that are mentioned here, these are what? Your class infix, right? So let's just keep these infixes in mind for now. And coming back to the documentation, we don't need to worry about media queries and all these things yet. It just explains, how Bootstrap, does all these things. But let's move to containers, right? So we've already, discussed about what containers are in our second HTML video that was there, where we talked about, inline and block level elements, right? And we discussed about two special types of elements that are there. One of them was div, which was a block level container, right? And one of them was span, which was an inline container, right? So containers are a fundamental building block of Bootstrap, right? That contain, pad and align your content within the device of or viewport, right? So there are, three types of containers that are there. So you have the dot container class, right? This dot container which sets a max width at each responsive breakpoint, right? And you have the container and then the breakpoint, right? So these class infixes that we talked about, these are your breakpoints, right? So these class infixes that are there, these are your breakpoints. Here, extra small is one breakpoint, small is one breakpoint, right? MD is one breakpoint, LG is one breakpoint, XL is one breakpoint, and double XL is one breakpoint, right? So again, I mean, moving back to the documentation, container hyphen breakpoint, right? So in place of this breakpoint, we are going to write, something like SM or Excel or something like that, LG, something like that, right? And width is 100% until the specified breakdown, something like that, right? We are going to understand what all of these means. And container fluid is again something which is width 100 for all breakpoints, right? Now let's take a look at the maximum width, the max width that is available for containers at different breakpoints, right? So for a regular container, right, a regular container, right, uh, for extra small screens it is going to be 100%, and that is there for all the cases, even if you add the class infix after that, right? Like something like SM, MD, LG, XL, double XL, whatever it is, even if you add that breakpoint that is there, it is still going to remain 100% for all the cases, right? For container fluid, you can see that it is going to remain 100% again for all screen sizes, regardless of, you know, whatever it is, right? And so for a screen size that is greater than or equal to 576 pixel, it is going to take the maximum width of 540 pixels, right? For a medium screen size with the, screen size greater than or equal to 768 pixel, it is going to take 720 pixel. Similarly, for large, it is going to take 960. For extra large, it is going to take 1140. And for extra extra large, it is going to take 1320, right? Now, let's, check out what this container class is, right? So let's come back to the code, right? We already have our bootstrap, you know, given here. And now let's say that I create a box, right? A box in bootstrap, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a div tag, right? And inside that div tag, I'm going to have an h1 tag saying bootstrap 5.2 tutorial, right? And I'm going to give this div a class called box, right? And let's add some style to this. Let's add some style to this, right? So for adding a style, what I can do is I can link my style sheet here, right? So I'm going to do a link, and I'm going to add a style sheet, and my href is going to be my style .css, a file that is already created for me, right? Here the file is already created. Let's add some styles into it. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to add a padding of, let's say, 20 pixel to it, right? We want to add a border of 3 pixels solid, and then black, right? Let's take a look at the output here. Okay, so here we can see the output in front of your screen, Bootstrap 5.2 tutorial, and it is taking the entire width that is there, right? And let's also take a look at the width of my screen that I'm working on right now. So if I take a look at my body tag, I can see that the screen width that I have right now is 1920. Right, so 1920 pixels is the width of my screen. So it means that I'm working with an extra large screen right now. Right. Um, Here if I hover on it, you can see that it's written 1920 into 102. So 102 is the height and 1920 is the width of my container. Right. Now let's say that in my index.html, I add a container here, right? So I add a div, right? And I'll add the closing div below, right? I'll fix the indentation and I'll give this a class called container, right? Notice that in Bootstrap, all the things that you see, it's a combination of a lot of classes for it, which CSS is already written, right? So container here is a class, right? Container fluid is a class. Container hyphen SM or LG or whatever, breakpoint you're adding, it is a class, right? So I'm going to add this container class here, and let's see how things changes, right? Now when I refresh my screen, you can see that this box has really moved inside and it's centered right now, but it is having some space on the left and some space on the right that is there, which means that the maximum width that this now is taking is relatively less than the entire width that was present to me, right? So if I again look at, my inspect and I check out the container, I can see that my entire width right now is 1320 into 102, right, with some orange and some green shade that is there. And again, if you remember what the orange and green shade means, then the orange shade is the margin that is there, and the green shade is the padding that is available, right? So with the margin and the padding removed, you can see that I am now left with about 1296 and 202, right? And here you can see for extra large screen, that is my screen size, the container uses the maximum of 1320 pixel, right? So again, I mean, coming back to here, you can see that my box this time is taking 1296, and the entire container is taking about 1320, but it also has some padding, so that padding is not included, right? If you remove the 12 padding here and 12 padding there, then the content becomes 1320. Right, but it's 1296 because of the padding, right? But this is the maximum width that it is taking because I've added the container. Right. Now let's try to change the size of the screen. Right. So the first thing that I want to do is, again, I mean, after inspecting, I'm going to stick this to the side this time. Right. And after sticking it to the side, I can see that now the maximum width that is there for my viewport is about 1365. Right. So 1365 pixels. Based on this 1365 pixels, uh, it now falls under the extra large category, according to which it should have around 1140 pixel of maximum width. And again, if I go inside my body and I take a look at the container that is there, yeah, so this container, I can see that it is taking the maximum width of 1140 pixel right now, right? And then it is taking 1116. Again, I mean, there's some padding that is involved, but the container is now taking the maximum width of 1140 pixels, right? If I again, let's say, do this, then this time, it is showing me for an iPad Air that is there, right? And it has a, width of 820 pixels as of now, right? This is the width, 820 pixel. Again, I mean, based on this, it falls in the MD category. It falls in the medium category here, which says that the maximum width now is going to be 720 pixels. So again, I mean, if I look at the container, this time my container is having the maximum width of 720 pixels. And if I change it again to a phone, let's say iPhone 12 Pro, something like that, now the maximum width of my device is 390, you know, pixels that is there, 390 pixels. And if I take a look at here, then my 390 falls under this extra small category, which says that it is going to take 100% of the width, right? So coming here, I can see that this time my diff container is taking the entire 390 pixels of it. It has just added some padding on the left as well as the right side right now, right? So that is my container. Right. And again, I mean, it totally depends on, if you want to have some maximum width or not for different screen sizes. Based on that, you can use container-sm, container-md, -lg, -xl, double XL, whatever it is, right? Based on your preference. But this container is really important, right? It is important. And again, I mean, we have covered all of these things. You can take a look at these responsive containers that are there. They have explained the responsive containers. So if you add a container-sm, then it will take 100% of width until the small breakpoint. If you add container MD, then it will take 100% width until medium breakpoint. Container LG 100% width until large breakpoint, XL, double XL, right? Whatever it is. So that was all about containers that are there. And we'll talk a little more about containers, what they, why they are important and why you should use them in your website in a little while. But before that, let's move forward to grids, right? Which is the main topic of this video. Here you can see that grids, basically consist of two classes. One is the row class, right? The row class, and one is the call class. So row class stands for rows that you want to have, and call stands for columns that you want to have in that particular row, right? So can, like, moving forward, we can talk about how it works. So our grid supports 6 responsive breakpoints. We have already talked about those breakpoints for extra small, small, large, and medium and extra large and double XL, right? So these are the 6 breakpoints that the grid supports in Bootstrap, right? It says that containers center and horizontally pad your content. So we've already seen how, using containers centers your entire box and leaves some space on the left and right side of the screen, right? Then we have rows. So rows are the wrappers for columns, right? Whenever you want to use columns, you need to enclose it in the set of rows that are there. Then we have columns. So columns are incredibly flexible, and let's read a little more about it. So there are 12 template columns available per row, right? And allowing you to create different combination of elements that span any number of columns. Column classes indicate the number of template columns to span, call for, spans for, whatever it is, right? And with, are set in percentages so that you can always have the same relative sizing, right? Whatever is written here, it might be difficult to understand, but I'm just going to explain to you how it usually works, right? So let's, go back to our xcali draw for understanding this, right? So let's try to understand a few things first. We know about what rows are, we know about what columns are. Now, before moving on to what exactly rows and columns are and how you can work with them to create responsive websites, let's first, discuss some rules that are there for, when you can use containers, and for columns and rows as well in general. Talking about the two things that we need to discuss, the first thing is that you can use the container or container fluid alone to contain elements and page content, right? So it doesn't needs to be explicitly used with CSS or Bootstrap grids only, but you can just use it to contain your stuff. It just adds a bit of padding to both sides, which looks nice, right? And if you use grid, that is the row and the call class that is there for rows and columns. Row must be inside a container or a container fluid. Always row must be inside a container or a container fluid, and a column must be inside a row, right? That is important, right? Now, having said that, let's talk about, what these rows and columns are. So supposedly, we are in the uncharted territories, and I haven't prepared any of this, so I'm just going to teach you with the flow, right? So let's say that we have a website, right? Let's take a look at the Virtual Tech School's website that is there, right? So I'm going to quickly open that up, virtualtechschool.org. Forget about the navigation bar that is there, right? Let's talk about this section, this one section, right? Join us today, right? So let's, in the last video we talked about, uh, the box model, how we can, design our layout in the form of boxes, and then, code that entire design using CSS grids. So that was the objective. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box model for this, right? So let's say we have 3 screen sizes, right? The first screen size that we have is our desktop. Right, this is the first screen size that we have, right? And if I talk about the box model for this one, then we first have a box, right, which says join us, right? This is the box that we first have. And then inside, after that, we have another set of, boxes, this time, representing 4 in a single row, right, with some content in it. This one is, let's say, for YouTube, this is for Twitter, this is for Discord, and this is for Hashnode, right? So we have this is the usual box model that we have in front of us, right? This is the usual box model, right? Now, if we talk about, how this entire thing looks like when we talk about an iPad, right? So let's say I again, select an iPad Air. In iPad Air, we can see, how the layout of this entire thing changed, right? So earlier it was, 4 boxes in a single row, right? But now it has two boxes per row, right? So if we talk about, yeah, so if we talk about a tablet, right, in the tablet we would see that our model changes a little bit, right? So this time we again have join us here, and after that we have, a row with two boxes, and then another row with two boxes, right? So this is the basic idea that is there, right? This is the box layout of box model of that particular section, right? Now let's talk about how that website looks when we talk about a mobile phone, right? So going into iPhone 12, right? Now you can see that there's only one box per row, right? So what happens this time is, again coming back here for the third particular layout, right? What we are doing is, this time this is the width that we have, right? And we have our joiners here, and after that we have box 1, we have box 2, and we have box 3, and we have box 4. Right. So this is, the general layout. Now you can see that with the same code base, I'm having different layouts for different screen sizes. For desktop, I have, two rows, one with the joiners, and then the next row I have four boxes. In the second row, in the second layout in the tablet, I have three rows this time, one with the joiners and then two rows with two boxes each. And then for mobile screens or for smaller screen sizes, I can, easily say that this is my, large screen size, large or above, right? So any screen size that is large, right? And by large, if we again go into the breakpoint here, so large is anything that is greater than 992 pixels, right? So any screen size that is greater than 992 pixels, right, is going to be considered large or above, right? I'm not talking about extra large, extra large. This is my large screen sizes, right? So I can say that the class in case that I'm going to use here, it is going to be LG. The breakpoint that I'm going to use here, it is going to be LG for this layout, right? Now for tablets, right, I can say that again this falls in the medium category, right? The medium category, right? And the class infix that I'm going to use for this one for my tablet layout is going to be MD. Right. So for large, we have LG here, and for medium, we have MD here. Right. And similarly, I can say that this is my small or below screen size. Right. So anything whatsoever that is lower than 768 pixels here, that is lower than this medium category. Right. Anything that is lower than this is going to be my small or extra small, whatever it is, and I can represent that with a simple SM, right? So this is the basic layout of that section, that joiner section that we just saw right now, right? Now let's talk about a bootstrap row, right? So let's talk about the bootstrap row, bootstrap rows, right? So let's say that I have a row here, right? A row of full width. Right, this is a row of full width that I have right now. Right, now any row that is there in Bootstrap that you can create, it can only be broken down into 12 parts that is there. So let's talk about these parts right now. Right, I'll quickly divide this row into 12 parts. So I have my first part here, then this is my second part, this is my third part, my fourth, my fifth, my sixth, my seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11, and then 12, right? So these are my 12 parts of the row, right? Now after these 12 partitions, if let's say I add one more, you know block into this, this entire, row that is there, it is going to automatically move into the next row that is there. As soon as it fills the 12 slots that are there available in a row, the next element is automatically going to move into the next row, right? Now to show you an example of this, again, let's come back to the code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this uh, thing. I'm going to create a class called row. So div class row, right? This is my row, right? A bootstrap row. Now I'm going to create some columns, right? So I'm going to say div class and then call one, right? So one means that I just want this to occupy one space out of the 12 that are available in a row, right? So I'm saying call one, and I'm going to give this a class called box, right? Because ultimately I want you know it have to I want it to have borders, right? So I'm quickly going to add this 12 times, right? So I'll change the numbering as well, right? Now if I save this and if I reload it here, I can see that I have my 12 boxes in front of me, right? So the 12 boxes that are available in a row that are there, right? You can see that my columns, the columns that I've created, all of them I've specified that I want them to only, take up the space of one slot that is there. So consider this as a row having, 12 slots available to it, right? And out of those 12 slots, I'm specifying in my columns that I only wanted to take one column out of those 12, right? So it has created these 12 boxes in a single row. Now let's say that I copy and paste this last line and add two more into it, right? I add a 13 and a 14 into it. I save this, I refresh it. I can see that the 13 and 14 are now coming into the next line, right? So it is not accepting more. You can see that this is again the part of the same row that is there, right? I haven't changed the number of rows that are created. I haven't specified that I want two rows for this, right? But I've specified, about 14 columns, each taking up to one block out of the 12 available in a row, right? So up till this 12 div that I have, it has taken up the first row completely, right? All the boxes that are there occupying just one space out of the 12, they are fitted into the first row. But as soon as I, start increasing that number, as soon as that 12 slots are filled up in the same row, it is creating a next row for my next boxes, right? For my 13 and 14, right? So similarly, I mean, if I create a new box, one more box, then it is going to take up a new row, right? Although I haven't specified two rows, but it is still going to take up a new row, right? Now moving here, right? Now let's say that I just talk about this section for the desktop, right? The first thing that I can do is that I can specify a call and then a 12 here, right? For this particular part, I can say that I want it to occupy the maximum width. I don't want anything else here. I want it to occupy the maximum width that is available to it. So the maximum width that is available to any column inside a row is going to be of 12 spaces, because a row only have 12 spaces available, right? So I'm saying that I want this row to occupy all the 12 spaces. And since in the next line I have these four boxes, if I, let's say, do a 12 divided by 4, right, it is going to equate to 3, right? So for each of these I can use a simple call and then 3, right? Let's try to code this up, right? You'll understand it better when I try to code it, right? So let's remove this part, right? Now the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a column with all the 12 spaces. I want it to take all the 12 spaces, and I want it to contain my h1, which is join us, right? This is my h1 tag here, join us, and it is taking the entire 12 columns of space, right? Now the second thing that I want to do is I want to create four more columns, right? But this time all of my columns are going to take a maximum space of 3, right? So that it is taking a maximum space of 3, right? And inside these columns I'm going to have h2 tags saying YouTube, and again, I mean, I can inside YouTube I can do a hash node, I can do Discord, I can do Twitter, right? If I save this now, if I go back here and if I refresh this, I can see that it is displaying four things to me right now, right? And again, I mean I can add a uh, box class here as well, just I mean for the sake of it, so that we can see the outlines as well. Right, so here you can see that the structure that I wanted to create, my joiners first, containing the entire width, and then my four boxes below it. I've successfully done it for, using simply the row as well as the call classes that were available, right? But let's now try to, change the size of my screen. So as we can see right now, let's forget about the phone right now. Let's just talk about the iPad that is there. So for tablets you can see that if I go into my virtual tech school and if I select the iPad here, then you can see that I'm seeing two boxes at a time, right? Because four boxes would be very cluttered. You can see that they don't have enough width to sustain the content that is inside it. So I just want two boxes at a time, I don't want four boxes at once, right? So now, how do I tackle this? Right, this is a problem that is in front of me. Right, so to tackle this, what I can do is that I have different screen sizes in front of me right now, and I want to say that for different screen sizes, I want it to each of my columns to take different space in the row that is there. So I am saying that when the screen size is large, right, when I'm talking about desktop and when my screen size is large, I want it to take call. I'm talking about the large screen size, so call hyphen LG hyphen 3. Right. Now this will only work on screen sizes that are large or above it. Right. So anything that is greater than 992 pixel is now going to follow this convention until and unless I add another call and then XL and then 2. Right. In that case, I mean, it is going to be only this LG is only going to be applicable from 992 pixel to 1200 pixel. But after that, it is going to consider the space or the layout that I've expressed for extra large screens, right? But we are not doing this. I mean, I don't want to have different layouts for my extra large or my extra large screens. I just want to have, display it as four boxes for my large screens. So I can simply do a call LG3, right? So I can simply change this call 3 to a call LG3. Right, so anything that is greater than large, it's going to display it with a space of three columns at a time out of the 12 that a row can hold. Right. Similarly, when we talk about the medium, right, now the class infix for this is MD, right, and I want two at a time. So if I do a 12, which is the maximum a row can hold, divided by 2, which is the number of boxes that I want to create in this row, I'm going to get the output of 6, right, 6. So what this is going to look like is this is going to look like my call and then MD and then 6, right? So let's try to add that. So I've selected this call LG3. I'm going to press Ctrl D so that all of the instances get selected one by one. And then I'm going to add a call MD for medium or greater than medium screen sizes up until LG because I've specified LG, and then 6. Right. So now if I save this and coming here, if let's say I remove this and I refresh this, I can see that for my large screen sizes I'm getting four boxes in a single row, right? But as soon as I move into a tablet, right? My layout changes. So now I'm having only two boxes per row instead of having four boxes itself, right? Now you must be getting a gist of what I'm talking about, right? Similarly, if let's say we talk about, our last layout, which is this layout, right? We want this to acquire the entire width that is there. We are going to do a call and then sm and then 12. SM stands for small screen sizes, right? So that is there. And for small screen sizes, you don't even have to, mention this SM, right? You can simply do a call 12 here. So instead of this entire thing, you can simply do a call and then 12. One of the simple reasons for that is that if we again take a look at the documentation of the Bootstrap that they've given, if we go into the breakpoint section specifically, then they have mentioned that extra small has no class infix, right? None is the class infix, and it works for screen sizes that is less than 576 pixels, right? So in our code, we have mentioned call LG3, we have mentioned call MD3, right? So the smallest screen size that we have mentioned to handle is the medium, right? So if we don't include any class infix that is there, then automatically any size that is below this is simply going to take up the last screen size that we specify for it, right? So here if I simply do a call and then 12, then it is going to apply automatically to both small as well as extra small, right? Because we have handled medium, we have handled large, so anything greater than large would be handled by this call LG3. Anything from medium to large will be handled by MD6, right? And anything below medium is going to be handled without any class infix, right? So if I save this now and if I refresh this, I can see that it is taking just one width for mobile phone, right? I can see that for iPad again it is taking two, you know, columns in a row, and then for my desktop it is taking regular four columns that it should take, right? So that is your responsive grid design using Bootstrap, and I know that this is pretty similar to what we did in the last video, but this time we are using Bootstrap, and you've seen how, the same thing can become responsive per se, right? So now let's do something fun, right? So in the beginning of this entire, boot camp, we talked about how we are going to be building, this virtual tech schools website that we see in front of us. Forget about the nav bar that is there. Let's just try to attempt two sections of this page, right? The first section, which is this one with free education for all and some text on the left side, image on the right side, right? And the second section, which is join us today, right? So let's try to attempt you know writing this code here, right? So again, I mean, I would prompt you to pause this video at this particular moment and try to do it by on your own. But in case you're not able to do it, then feel free to resume this video and I'll be doing it in front of you, right? So let's do that, right? Uh, let's code this entire thing, right? The two sections of this website, this first section and the join us today section, right? And this time we'll use the styles as well, right? So we talked about semantic tags that were there, in the very first video of HTML, we saw some semantic tags in HTML. We can see in W3 school, they've mentioned all the semantic tags for article, aside, detail, section and things like that. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to create a section tag, right? So this is our first section that we are talking about, right? Now this section tag is again going to first thing have a container, right? We don't want it to take the entire full width of it because that would look very messy, right? Just like how it is there in the website as well, it is having some space on the left side, some space on the right side as well. So we want it to, maintain that thing. So we are going to use the class container, right? And inside the class container, I can see that I have two columns right now, the first column and the second column, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a row, right? So inside a container goes always the row, right? Remember these things, right? And because without a row, you cannot create columns, right? A column needs to be wrapped inside a row, and the row needs to be wrapped inside a container, right? So, container, I mean, it's not necessary that the container is the direct parent, as we are going to see soon, but there should be a container above a row, right? So, I have this row now. The first thing that I want to do is I want to create the two sections that are there, right? So, I'm going to do a div class and then call uh, I think for my mobile layout it is going to be one after the other, this entire thing. If I select, okay, for tablet it is one after the other, one two three, right? And for mobile as well it is one after the other, and for desktop it is like this, right? So I'm going to create a call, and then for since for mobile screens it was one after the other, I'm going to create a call 12, right? Because in mobile screens I wanted to take the maximum width that is available. uh, I don't need to specify this for medium screen sizes as well, because I wanted to follow the same pattern for medium screen sizes as well. The pattern changes when we are talking about the large screens, right? So I'm going to specify call LG for large screens, large, extra large, and extra extra large screens. And I'm going to say that I want this column to be 6, right? And this is going to be my left section, right? And similarly, I'm going to have a right section as well. And the configuration for the right section is going to be more or less similar, right? Okay, so now I have my column, right? Now here you can see that if I talk about my left column, it again has two rows, right? I mean, it has two rows in the sense that there's this free education for all, which is one, and then below this we have some text. We have all these text that is available here, right? So I mean, since and all these both these two columns, they are taking the full width, right? So it's better for me. I mean, since there are boxes inside of boxes, it's better for me to create another row, right? So I create another row here, right? I'm going to do a div class row. So this is my nested row, a row inside a column, right? And next I want to create two columns with maximum width that are there, right? So I want to create two columns here that are going to take the maximum width, right? So I'm going to do a div class and then call, sorry. So I'm going to do a div class and then call 12, right? And again, I mean, I'm going to do the same, right? Something like this. So this is how it is. Now, let's say that I add a h1 here saying heading, or not heading. I mean, let's just do what it says. So free education for all, right? So free. I mean, I'm going to explain all of this, what I'm doing, but for now, just stay with me. So free education for all, and below that I'm going to create a p tag inside which I'm going to copy this text and I'm going to paste it here, right? So something like that. So we have our text available, we have our free education available, and in the second section what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an image tag with an src of image.png. I already have an image in my folder right now, this one, so I'm going to use this image.png, right? And let's just save this, let's see what happens, right? So I refresh this and I see that I mean, it has tried to do some things, but it has failed, right? So the first thing that we can improve here is that we can fix concise the width of our thing, right? So width is equal to 100% of the parent, right? Something like that. If I refresh this, I can see that my image is now relatively smaller. Right. Now let's take a look at this layout. Right. I mean, the image is smaller, so let's take a look at this layout and try to understand what is happening here. Right. So inside the body tag, we have the section tag. Right. And inside the section tag, we have our container. So with container, you can see how it has left some space on left and right side. Right. If I expand this, you can see that there's this row. So this is my first row that is coming up. Right. If I click on this row, you can see that I have my left section as well as my right section that is available, right? Let's try to break down the left section. So if I click on the left section, I can see that there's again row, right? Now this row, what it is doing is it is, clubbing the content that is there, right? So earlier I mentioned that whenever you want to have columns, they should always be wrapped inside a row, right? If I go into my XKLU draw here, then here you would see that columns must be inside a row, right? It is specified here, this thing columns must be inside a row, right? So that's exactly what we are trying to do, right? So since we wanted columns here that are taking full width, we wrapped it again inside a row, right? So we already had a column with the maximum width of half in large and greater than large screens. Then we have a row, and inside the row we have, two columns taking full width. Regardless of the size, it is going to take full width, right? And that is exactly what is happening here. So we have this row, and inside the row we have this column 1 which is taking the full width, and we have column 2 which is taking the full width, call 12, right? And if you move into the right section, then in the right section we can see we directly have the image that is there, right? Now all that is needed to be done here is to add a little bit of styling to, improve this entire thing, right? So now one thing that you would notice is that if let's say, and I mean, this is just the desktop view, right? So if I click on the mobile view, then mobile view, you can see that it is appearing one after the other, just like we wanted. And if you talk about iPad view, you can see that it is appearing one after the other, just like we wanted, right? Now here, if you again come back to the desktop view, you will notice that this left section that is there, the contents of it are not center aligned, right? I mean, they are on top of it, but the entire height, it leaves a lot of space at the bottom, which looks kind of weird. And here you would notice that it's taking the full height that is available to it, right? So to tackle this again, I mean, if we go into the Bootstrap's documentation and we go into the columns that are there for Bootstrap, then you would notice that in the second example they have shown that the height of the row is pretty much, but the columns are still center aligned, right? Vertically center aligned. So here you would see that they have used a class with the row called align item center, right? So we are going to copy this align item center, and what we are going to do is we are going to put this class in this row, right? Now if I refresh this, I can see that my entire thing has moved down, right? So again, if I go into my body inside section inside container, I can see that the row inside which these sections were mentioned, right? The row I have given it the class align item center, which automatically vertically aligns these things, right? So in the Bootstrap documentation, you are going to find a lot of things, right, that are, that might be useful. So it is recommended that you eventually go through, all of these examples that give them for different things, and just, try to understand what is happening, what class is, doing what exactly, and things like that. You can also, copy these code snippets to your clipboard, paste them in your, HTML, and try to tinker with them a little bit. Try to see, what class is doing what and things like that. And you have some things for content as well for images, let's say responsive images. Sometimes you need your images to be responsive, for which there's a class called image fluid, right? So here again, I mean, instead of doing width 100, we could have simply given a class called img and then fluid, right? If I save this now and if I refresh my demo, then you can see again that I don't need to provide a width of 100. It's automatically taking that. So image fluid is a class for images, right? For tables, they have certain, classes that are there with which you can create your tables, right? Responsive tables, that is. And for forms as well, they have a range of, things that you can do for forms. There are different components as well. For example, accordion is a component that is used to, create FAQ type of things. If you take a look at the Virtual Tech Schools website, then below you will see that this is an accordion. It is built with an accordion, this entire FAQ section. Right. Similarly, I mean, they have alerts, badges, breadcrumbs, and things like that, scroll spy. So you can, go through all of these things and take a look at their examples as well, how, they have done different things. Um, they have some things for helping as well, for colors and backgrounds, colored links and things like that. They have utilities as well. For utilities, you can take a look at the spacing that is there for, let's say, providing nominal margin and padding and things like that, right? And along with, you know s- uh, the property, uh, they have a certain notation, right? So for margin and padding they have some certain notation, and since margin and padding is important, I'm going to explain that a little bit, right? So the first thing that they have for these notations is the property that is there. So M stands for margin and P stands for padding, right? So the first thing that they have, and this is for margin and padding, right? So the first thing that you have is the property, right? This means that M is going to be margin and P is going to be padding, right? Then the next thing that they have is side. Which side do you want to apply this thing on, right? So they have size, sorry, side, right? So inside you can see that T stands for top, B stands for bottom, S stands for start. By start you mean the left side, right? E stands for end, which means the end side, right? X stands for the X axis, that you want it both on left as well as the right side, and Y stands for the Y axis, that you want it both on top as well as bottom, right? So um, again, I mean, going back to here, they have these T, which stands for top, right? They have B for bottom. They have S for start, or you can say left. They have E for end, or you can say right, right? Then they have X for sides, or not sides. This is for X axis, or you can say left and right, both, right? And then you have Y, which is for Y axis. Again, I mean, this is top and bottom, right? So this is your sides, and then finally you have the size. So you can see that the size goes from 0 to 5, right? And there are different, spaces that they give based on the size that is there. So just like rows had a maximum availability of 12 columns that you can fit into it, right? This have a maximum, size of 5, starting from 0 all the way to 5, right? So if I, let's say, want to apply padding, right, to all the sides that are there, so I can simply do a P and then any value from 0 to 5, right? 0 to 5. 0 doesn't adds any padding, but 5 will add the maximum amount of padding that you can give to it, right? So P and then hyphen 0 to 5 would add padding. Similarly, M and then hyphen 0 to 5 would add margin, right, to, around the entire thing, right? Similarly, you could do a PT or a PS or a PE, PB, PX, PY, whatever it is, which is going to add the padding just to the top, right? PT and then let's say 3. You can do an empty, right? Or MB, right? For bottom, you can add a margin on bottom with the 4, let's say. And sometimes, I mean, since we are talking about Bootstrap, where the thing is responsive, sometimes you want padding, you know, to be different when you're talking about different elements for different screen sizes, right? So let's say that you might be wanting a padding of 5 when you're talking about large screen sizes, because there's a lot of space on the screen and you don't want your thing to look cluttered. But talking about a mobile screen, you want that padding to be just 2 or 1, right? Because the screen size is small and you don't want to spread your stuff a lot, right? So in that case, you can, let's say, do a P and then SM, right? Or again, I mean, since we are just talking about small screens, we don't need SM, we don't need any convention. P5 and P3, or not 3, even not 3 or 5 or anything. We want a padding of 2 for small screen sizes. We want a padding of 3 for medium screen sizes. PMD3, medium 3, right? And we want a padding of 5 for large screens. So P, LG, and 5, right? So this will apply different paddings to different screen sizes, right? So similarly, I mean, if we look at our demonstration here, you can see that currently, I mean, the one thing that I really need right now in this entire thing is I want to add some space on top as well as bottom of it, right? So coming to the section, I think section, since I mean it defines the entire section, what I can do is I want it to have some padding, right? So I can give it a class called P, right? I want the padding to be on the top and the bottom of it, which is my y-axis. So PY, right? And I want this padding to be 5, right? I save this, I refresh this, and I can see that now the padding has been added on top as well as bottom of it, right? I might not be satisfied with this padding right now, and I might want to add some more padding. So I can do the same thing again inside the main row that is there, that is containing both my left as well as right section as well. So I can say that inside this row I want a padding of 5, that is there, right? Again, you can see some more padding has been added into it, right? I can add some more padding here, I can add some more padding here, but I don't need any more of that, right? So that was my padding. Now let's take a look at how this thing looks when we talk about you know our tablets. Right. So for tablets, you can see that now the padding that it has given on top of it is still fine, right? But the padding between this, and this is not, right? So here, I mean, here also you will see that I'm not satisfied the padding between this and this, right? So let's fix that. The first thing that I'll do here, I'm just looking at my website in the large screen right now, right? So I'm just going to add anything for the large screen right now. I'm going to say that I want a margin, right? Margin on the bottom, so MB, and I want the MB of 3 here, right? So I want an MB of 3. I can see that the space between this and this has increased, right? I may or may not be satisfied with that. In my case, I want to change it to MB4. I save this, I refresh this, and you can see that the space has again increased a little bit. I'm fine with the space. Now if I, let's say, inspect it for my tablet, I can see that now this and this is fine, but I want some space between this and this as well, right? And this is in the case of medium screen sizes. I don't want it in the case of large screen sizes. I want it in the case of medium screen sizes, right? So I can do an MB here, right? And in the MB I can again specify 4, right? But this is for medium screen sizes. So for medium, it is going to be 4. But when we talk about large screen sizes, I want it to be 0, right? So for medium, the margin at the bottom, I want for medium screen sizes to be 4. But for large screen sizes, I want it to be 0, right? If I refresh this now, I can see that my this entire thing looks better now, right? And here also, I mean, it looks the same. Now let's check out how this thing looks when we talk about a mobile phone, right? So iPhone 12 Pro, I click on it and I can see that the padding on the top is a bit weird, right? I mean, I don't want that amount of padding, right? That padding was fine when we talked about medium and screens greater than medium, but for smaller screens, that's not fine, right? So here I'm going to do an MB, not here, but this is the padding that we are talking about. I mean, we added 2 layers of padding, right? So here what I can do is I can say that when the PY, I mean the padding on the Y axis, when we are talking about the medium or greater than medium screen sizes, right? I want it to be 5, right? But for smaller screen sizes, I want it to be 0, Right, if I save this now and if I refresh this, I can say that that entire padding 5 does not applies when we talk about smaller screen sizes. The first one is still being applied to all the screen sizes, but the second padding, this one, this is not getting applied to small screen sizes. It is only getting applied to screen sizes that are medium or greater than medium, right? So I see that this looks good, right? I'm not satisfied between the space of these two, right? So I can again change that here. So I've specified for medium, I've specified for large, right? I can specify for small as well. I can say that for small, I can actually just remove this MD and it is going to apply for small screen size as well, right? So just in the case of large, I don't want any margin below it, but in case of medium or small or extra small screen sizes, I want it, right? So just a simple MB4 is going to do that for me, right? Same goes for here, but here I mean, since I needed this space in the large screen sizes as well, I didn't specify MBLG0, right? I wanted to apply to all screen sizes. So now this entire block looks responsive, right? I can inspect it, I can see that for mobiles as well it is looking responsive. For iPad as well, it is looking responsive. Now, one thing that I want to do is I want to add a background color to this entire thing, right? So for background color, what I can do is I can add a class to my section, right? So this section I can add a class and I can say that I want this to be blue BG, right? Which stands for a blue background, right? I can add a style here. I don't need this anymore. I'm just going to change this to blue BG, right? And I'm going to give this a background color of navy, right? I save this now, I refresh this, I can see that the background color has changed significantly, right? Similarly, I mean, I can change the color as well. I know that on a dark color, this light color doesn't looks good, so I can change the color. I can do color, and then I want the color of the text to be white, so this color stands for color of the text, right? I save this, I refresh this, I can see that now it's appearing in white this time, right? But the color that is mentioned here, right, this background color and this background color, it doesn't matches, right? So let's say that you're cloning some website and you're not sure, how to get the colors of this website in particular. So for that there are a lot of Chrome extensions available. I'm going to install a Chrome extension right now, which is known as color picker, right? So color picker Chrome extension, right? So color picker Chrome extension, I get it in the first thing only, right? And I'm going to add this to Chrome. I'm going to add this extension, and as you can see, this extension has been added right now. I'm going to pin this extension for me so that I don't have to find it again and again. And now, I mean, if I go to my virtual tech school, I click on it. uh, I can click on pick and I can say that I want this color, right? Whatever this color is, it has given me the codes for it. So I can copy this code here, right? I can close this up and I can just change my background color directly to that code, whatever it provided me. I save this, I refresh this, and you can see that the background color that I had there is now appearing here as well, right? This looks much better right now, right? And don't worry about all these additional styles that we have applied with this gradient and these and the font sizes and things like that. We're going to cover that eventually going forward, but the first section, we have pretty much added that first section. The only difference is that this was centered, and in our case it is not centered, right? So again, I mean, for alignments as well, Bootstrap has utilities, right? You can inside the utilities you can check out some of the other utilities. I think for so utilities regarding text, I think is going to be the one that we are looking for. And you can see that they have this text centered here, and they have used this class called text center that is there, right? So text start, text end, and text center are three classes. For start, I mean, it is going to get your text at the start of it on the left side. Center is going to center it, and end is going to put it at the right of it, right? So I mean, for this, we can add a simple class or not here, I mean here we can add a simple class on the div on the parent tag. We can say text center here, and we can say text center here. If I refresh my website now, I can see that my text is centered now, right? So we've pretty much, built the first section of the website. Forget about the styles for now. We are going to, uh, you know, do some CSS later on and add those styles. Let's move on to the next section, right? This section that we have in front of us, right? So we are going to now start coding the second section. This is going to be section again, right? Inside the section, I mean, if you take a look above, we added some padding so that it doesn't hurt to add any padding here as well, right? We are going to add a class, but we are going to remove this blue BG because we don't need a blue background for it, right? And I'm going to create a div again with class container here, right? So I have my div. Now again, we have already discussed this layout. So the first thing that is going to come is the row, right? There's always going to be a row. Inside the row, we are going to have, columns, right? So div class and then call 12, right? This is going to remain full width no matter what, right? And this is also going to have a text center, right? Because we want the text inside it to be centered. Inside this, we are going to have an h2 tag saying join us today, right? Something like that. So this is something that we are going to have, and this text center here with the join us today here. Now do note that while creating this, I used h1 above, but I used h2 below, right? So this is considered to be a good practice when your page only has one h1 tag, right? Because that, helps with the SEO of the website. But later about the best practices, I have an h2 tag here with join us today right now, right? And then I'm going to have another, set of classes that are there with call, right? Now for small screen sizes, I want it to be 12 as we discussed. For medium screen sizes, call MD. I wanted to take, half of the width that is available per box. And for larger screen sizes, I want to take one fourth of what is available. So 12 are available, one fourth of it is going to be 3, right? So this is what I'm going to have. Again, I'm going to add a text center here because we want our text to be centered, right? And we are going to create, four such instances here, right? Because we have four boxes. Now inside this, you can see that I again have, different, rows that are there. So it's better to create a row, right? Div class and row. Now I mentioned that a row tag needs to be inside a container tag, right? So you will say that this row tag here is inside a column tag, but you see that there's already a container tag at the very top of the hierarchy, right? So since there's already a container tag, then this row tag will take this as the container, and you don't need to specify another container tag that is there, right? So I have a row. Now I'm going to add, you know call 12, just call 12 because I only have one. I wanted to take the entire width, right? And I'm just going to, add three things. One is going to be an h3 tag saying YouTube, right? Then there's going to be another h3 tag saying some number, right? 100, right? And then there's going to be a button, right? So a button, and I mean in this button we are going to say join, right? And we save this, right? We refresh this, and we can see that our join us today section is coming up, right? So similarly, I mean, let's add this content into the other uh, columns as well, right? So YouTube, we have Discord, right? Then after Discord, we have Twitter, and after it we have hash node, right? Something like that. Now you'll see that we have these buttons. So I'm going to give this a class because I mean the buttons currently look ugly. You can see that this join button is not something that I want. So I'm going to give this a class called style button, right? Style btn, right? Something like that. So I'm going to give this a class and we are going to add some styles into that class now. So I'll give all these buttons this class, right? And then I'm going to create a style for this class style and then button, right? The first thing that I want to do is I want to get rid of the border of this button. So I'm going to do a border none, right? So you can see that my border is now removed and I'm not sure why. Okay, so one basic mistake that we did was that instead of this MD3 it should have been LG3, right? So that's why we are getting, you know, two at a time. So I'm going to replace this with LG and I refresh this. You can see that now I have four at a time, right? So okay, so the now you can see that the borders of the buttons are removed, right? The next thing that I want to do is I want to add some padding into it, right? So I'm going to give it a padding, and for padding at the top and the bottom, I wanted to, uh, have a padding of 10 pixels, right? And at the left and the right, I wanted to have 20 pixels, right? I save this, I refresh this, and you can see that the padding has increased, right? I can increase it a bit further. Instead of 20 I can do 30 pixels here, so they are going to look a bit broader, right? I can add a background color here, so background color, and then let's take the background color that we have used here, right? So I'm going to pick the color. I want this color, so this is the color that we want, and then we want a foreground color for the text as well, right? So again I'm going to pick the color of the text here this time, right? I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this here, right? So if I refresh this now, I can see that my buttons look a bit less ugly. I can change the font size a bit. I can say that I want a font size of uh, 20 pixels or something. That has increased the size a little bit, and I can give that a border radius as well. So border radius, uh, adds a radius to the border of it. I can give it a radius of 10 pixels, right? If I refresh this now, I can see that uh, the edges are now, the corners are now curved, right? So it has a radius. Let's move it to 5, right? So this in general is looks better, right? And now again, I mean, coming back to all um, the styles, the padding and all that we need to add, uh, and after this join us, I'm going to add a bottom margin, right? So a margin bottom of 5, right? I'm going to refresh this and I can see that my boxes have moved below. Now in the website, I can see that for these boxes, I've provided a box, right? A proper box. So what we can do is inside this row, right? For this row, we can add another div here and we can say stat box here, which is going to wrap this entire thing, right? So a stat box is something that we have added and I'm just going to like copy paste this, right? So it looks the same. I mean, the names are appearing to be same, but that's not the problem. We are going to create some styles for stat box. So I'm going to add a border again, border of zero point 0.5 pixels, right? I want it to be really thin, right? I want it to be solid and I want it to be black in color, right? If I refresh this, I can see that, now the boxes are appearing, right? Now I could add some padding as well, or not the padding, but I can give it a border radius. So I'm going to give it a border radius of 5 pixels, right? So I can see that my boxes are now rounded. I want it to be a bit more rounded, so I'm going to do 10 pixels here. You can see that CSS is all about hit and trial, right? So now I mean these boxes are appearing as they should be. Now here I mean inside the boxes I want it to be a bit spacey. So this stat box that we have created, right? The stat box inside this I can add some padding as well, right? So I can do a P of 5 here. I refresh this and I can see that now my boxes, appear to be a bit I can reduce this, I think, to 3, which would look decent. Yes. And again, I mean, for my these stats, all these columns that are there, I can add a margin or a py or a my margin on the y-axis of 2, right? Something like that. And this is going to have an empty 2 and this is going to have an MB2. So for the first one, for the very first element, we just want the margin on the bottom, or instead of this, what I could do is I could just add a margin bottom 2, right? So I want the margin to be at the bottom of it, right? Margin bottom 2, and I can repeat the same process for my others as well, MB2 and then MB2 and then MB2. So note that in the last where I have my button, I'm not adding a margin there, and the reason is that then it is going to look a bit disfigured, right? Because I already have a padding. So I just want the margin to be between the first second and the second third, right? I don't want any margin above the first one or below the last one, right? I save this, I refresh this, and not sure why it is not reflecting. I think it is already taking that much amount of margin. Let me try to increase the margin that I want to offer. Let's change this to 4, refresh this, and you can see that the margin between the elements have increased, right? So that is there. And the last bit that is there, I mean, in terms of visually how it looks like, is that these boxes, they have some space between them, right? So we need to add that space between these boxes as well. Now this is the stat box, right? This is the if we inspect this, right? If we inspect this entire thing, then you would notice that this is the stat box which falls inside the row, right? This is the row, right? And this is the total column that is there, and then this is the joiners today. So uh, we are obviously dealing with these columns right now, this one and these two and these three and these four, right? So the first set of columns that we have, right? And inside this we have this row, right? So and inside the row we have added a div with the margins, right? So this div with the margins already exist inside the row. If let's say we add some padding inside the row itself, do you think that if we add some padding here in the row, right, inside of which we have created the stat box, then it should add some space between the boxes that is there, right? So I can simply do a padding of 1 here, right? I save this, I refresh this, and I can see that there's some space between my box 1 and box 2 right now, right? So similarly, I mean, not even P1, but I can do a PX1. So I want this padding to only be on the x-axis, and I can add the same padding everywhere. I can do a PX1 here, I can do a PX1 on this row, and I can do a PX1 on this row. And this way, I mean, my boxes are a bit spacious than before, right? So I mean, this version that we have created right now, this doesn't exactly look like the one that we have online, but we are getting there eventually, right? So in the last video that we created, your objective was to create the box model of this entire website and then create the entire box model with the help of CSS grids, right? The plan and code, right? After which you can clone any website, right? So in this video, we've learned about Bootstrap. We had learned about, Bootstrap classes and what grid in Bootstrap is, what, containers are, what rows are, what columns are. And I think that even if you have any doubts at this point of time regarding rows and columns and things like that, or how actually the breakpoints work for small, medium, large, extra large screen sizes and things like that, if you have any doubts, then eventually I think then that those doubts are going to go away as much as you practice, right? Based on the practice that you do, right? So we have already coded the first two sections of this section as well as the second section that is there, right? Now the next thing that I would like you do you the next thing that I would like you guys to attempt is to code the rest of the sections that are there. So apart from the two sections, we have this third section, the journey through the road less traveled, with this text on the left and this image on the right. Forget about all the styles that we are doing, right? Don't worry about the styles. Don't worry how this is glowing, and don't worry about the size differences of different text in the website versus what you are building and things like that. Then for FAQs, I've already told you that it is built using something called an accordion, which is here in your components, right? So explore this accordion, right, and try to build this FAQ section that we have in our website, right? Try to build the footer as well. This footer, I mean, I've not used any component for this. This is coded with pure rows and columns and things like that. So try to create this section as well, right? And code this section. You can take this entire page without any styles or anything as the assignment for this video, right? And as for the submission of this assignment, again you can go into my Discord server and you can check out the assignment channel that is there, and you can submit your assignments there, coding this entire thing, this time with Bootstrap. No styles are needed, just the layout of this using Bootstrap, right? And I mean, once that is done, I'm going to review your assignments. I would like you to send me some screenshots of your entire, thing as well, how it is looking and stuff like that. So that, I mean, I don't have to actually clone your code and run it on my device just to see what you have done, right? So images and the link to the GitHub repository would be an ideal submission if you're doing it, right? The link to understand, the link to the assignment would be in the description below. The link to the our Discord server would be in the description below. And with that being said, I think that's pretty much it for this video. In this video, we, touch based a little bit about Bootstrap, and now I think after this video, you would have a better understanding of how you can build responsive websites using Bootstrap. Since we have already started coding this website, we are going to spend a little bit of more time on Bootstrap. We are going to spend a little bit of more time on exploring CSS and media queries and things like that. And once we have done all the exploration of these things, obviously, I mean, we are going to explore these things while we are coding, while we are doing this. So the next video is going to be a little bit about, media queries and CSS, and a little bit of more about CSS, in which we are going to move this website forward. So up until now we have built this, right? And this code that I have built, again the link to this code would be uh, mentioned in the description below, right? And you can also contribute notes for this video. Again, to contribute notes, the link would be in the description below. And not just in the description, all these links that I've mentioned, they would be there as the pinned comment as well, so you can check there out. If you like this video, then to make sure to give a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you like to explore more videos before subscribing, feel free to do that. uh, it's your decision ultimately. And with that being said, I think that's pretty much for it for this video. If you learned anything from this video, then do make sure to give me some feedback about it in the comment section below. And do make sure to write some content about it. Maybe some content on Bootstrap, maybe some content on grades, some best practices about grades, or just the general things that you're building. And whatever you are building, whatever content you are creating, whatever you are doing, use this hashtag learning with Apoorv, and tweet it on Twitter, right? Try to build your audience, right? And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, peace.